my beautiful bookish friends, I'm Bowen and welcome to my channel. This video is going to be my August wrap up, which is coming to you very late, and I am deeply sorry about that. I have been the queen of the procrastination nation lately and it is past the middle of September when I'm filming this. I have a lot of books to talk about in this video, so maybe you want to grab yourself a drink, a cuppa, a snack of some description, because we might be here a while. So in the month of August, I was participating in the Magical Readathon. Now, if you don't know what the Magical Readathon is, it's a readathon hosted by G over at Book Roast. I will link her original video down below and her describing the readathon, and I will also link my TBR in the description down below as well. My goal for this month was to complete the entire syllabus, and that is 42 books in 1 month, and I did it. I actually did it. Again, I actually don't know how I did it, but I managed to read 42 books this month. So that was 12,278 pages that I read in August, which is a lot. It was a lot. I strongly suggest that you watch G's video first, because I'm going to be doing this wrap up a little bit differently. Normally with my wrap ups, I list them in the order that I read them. This one I'm going to be going in the order of the syllabus. Some of the books might be a little bit out of order. It might make sense, it might not make sense, but we're going to find out. But here's all 42 books that I read in the month of August. We might be here a while. So the first class was for alchemy, and to get an O in alchemy I had to read the first book in a series, and for this I read Alien Tyrant by Ursa Dax. I gave this book a 3-star and a 2 spice rating. The caveman vibes were just not for me. It was very big, strong alien man has to protect tiny, weak human female, and it just strongly gave me the ick. It reminded me quite a bit of like Ice Planet Barbarians, but with opposite weather. So like Ice Planet Barbarians is very cold, this is like desert style, but the whole power dynamic between big strong man, tiny puny human just gave me such eye rolling that I feel like I actually got a migraine reading this because of how much eye rolling I did. It was so annoying that it really put me off the entire book. There's another thing that bothered me about this book, and you get it a lot with alien romances, and that's the miscommunication of the language barrier. I get it, but it annoys me. And I know this is me being petty, but we've established that I am petty, so it's fine. But like, this book wasn't bad, but just the language barrier miscommunication annoys me, and the power imbalance just really put me off this book. It was fine, it was mid, I just didn't really vibe with it all that much, so 3 stars for me. To get a Q in alchemy, I have to continue a series, and so for this one, I read volume 9 of Spy Family. I gave this book a 3.75. I really love all of the family fun that they have in this book. I really enjoyed that. I love Spy Family. There's certain parts of it where I just don't vibe with it. I just love the family aspect so much. I'm going to continue reading this series for as long as they put them out. And to get a D in alchemy, I had to read the last book in a series. And for this one, I read Make Me by Tessa Bailey, and this is the last book in the Broken Beautiful series. I gave this book a 3.25, and I also gave it a 3 spice rating. I feel like the way that Russell worships Abby is somewhat dehumanising and a little bit toxic, which to be fair makes me deeply uncomfortable. I don't like that dynamic. This is why I like the Enemies to Lovers one better, because they see their flaws and they love them because of them. This one just feels like the deep antithesis of the opposite of that, and I just didn't like it. Like, it's not a bad book, it's not badly written, I just didn't really vibe with it all that much. Russell has his own issues and he has his trauma when it comes to people that are of the same class. I don't want to use that word, but the same class as Abby. His friends literally tell him to go to therapy, which he doesn't. This could have all been solved if he'd have just listened to his friends. Abby is awesome. She is smart, she is capable. She's a little bit socially awkward, but like, I think she's great. And Russell just puts her on this pedestal that is so fucking unrealistic. It's just kind of annoying because it takes away from all of her badassery and all of her amazing humanness and makes her into this other being. The pedestal that he puts her on is ridiculous, because the only thing that you can do from a pedestal is fall from it. I've not read any of the other books in this series, I literally just picked up the last one, but I just didn't vibe with this. Russell is not book boyfriend material to me. The next class is animal studies, and to get an O in animal studies I had to have one of my pets pick, so I'll insert a clip of which one Lily picked.
Pick one. Oh. She picked Demon in the Wood. Just for the record, I did actually tap on all of them. She's just really fucking slow on the uptake.
So Lily picked Demon in the Wood by Leigh Bardugo and Danny Pendergast. I gave this book a 4.25. The artwork in this is absolutely stunning, and seeing an insight into the Darkling's backstory it's kind of sad and it's kind of dark, but it makes a lot of sense to his character as well. This got me really excited to watch season 2 of Shadow and Bone, which I have now actually caught up on, and I love that, and I love this, and I love this entire world. I kind of want to reread Shadow and Bone, the original trilogy now. As for this, I absolutely adored it. The artwork is brilliant. If you like Six of Crows, Shadow and Bone, that whole universe, I definitely recommend picking this one up. It is so good. To get a Q in animal studies, I had to read a debut book, and for this I read A Mate's Denial by P. Jameson. I gave this book a 3.25 and a 1 spice rating. It's pretty standard as far as shifter romances go, but I did enjoy the fact that Traeger, the main male character, was a little gentler than a lot of shifter romances that have the whole I am man beat on chest energy that a lot of those have. This was a lot gentler than that, and I really actually quite enjoyed that. The epilogue had me intrigued to pick up the rest of the series, but as far as shifter romances go, it's pretty standard. There wasn't really much about it. It was pretty middle of the road. But I did enjoy it, because I like that kind of thing. And to get a D in animal studies, I had to read a book in 2 days, and for this one I read The Wrong Mr. Right by Stephanie Archer. I gave this book a 4.5 and a 3 spice rating. This series is absolutely right up my street. I was up until like 3 AM reading this book. I didn't finish it at 3 AM, I finished it the next morning because like I'm a grown ass adult and I really need sleep because I can't cope otherwise. But I am obsessed with this series. This one has the teach me trope in it, which can come across as really cringe, but for some reason I really like that trope. I love that the characters are all kind of around my age, and like Hannah's having the I'm turning 30 crisis, which is why she enlists the help of Wyatt, and Wyatt is like the ladies' man surfer, and he really falls for her, and he refers to her as Bookworm because she owns a bookstore, so there's that as well. There's so much about this that I really, really enjoy. I love this series. I'm going to continue reading this series, and I think Stephanie Archer might actually be a new favourite for me. For my next class, it was Art of Illusion, and to get an O in Art of Illusion, I had to read a book without touching the ground. For this one, I read Birthday Cake by Em Malone. This is a book I read at work, which is very much a without touching the ground kind of situation, and it's only 79 pages, so I got through it really quickly. This is a very short little novella about a girl that tries to seduce her brother's best friend on her birthday. Now, unless the cake is his ass, there was no cake to be found anywhere in this book. And I'm really not a big fan of the brother's best friend trope. Like, why in the shit should your sibling give a damn about who the fuck you're sleeping with? Like, it just seems really fucking dumb. But with this book being so short, there really isn't a lot to say about it. She sets out to seduce him by doing yoga in tiny shorts in front of him, and it works, and they have sex. A lot. In 79 pages, but that's it. That's pretty much the entire book. That's everything that happens, and I have no thoughts on it. It was fine. It was a bit mid, but it worked. So, you know, that was it. That was the entire book. To get a Q in Art of Illusion, I had to read an audiobook, and for this one, I picked up The Humans by Matt Haig. I gave this book a 3.5. This very much straddles the line between being deep and philosophical and just pretentious as fuck. Like, it depends on which side that you fall. It could be very much either. I found it really pretentious personally, but if it resonates with you, it's going to hit you hard. If it's not something that would resonate with you, you just kind of feel a little bit preached at. and I just wasn't a fan of that at all. I feel like with this author in particular, he really has to hit you at the right point in your life, otherwise it's just not going to work. I liked the story, it's well written, I just don't think this author is for me anymore. I read one of the books by him that I really liked, but I think that I'm past his work now, if that makes sense. It just wasn't for me. And to get a D in Art of Illusion, I had to read a book with no magic, and for this one I read Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This book is about Ari and Russell, and Ari is the weather girl and Russell is the sportscaster at this news station, and their bosses used to be married, but now it's this weird toxic kind of tension in the workplace, so they're trying to get their bosses back together. It was kind of like The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren, except this one was done better in my opinion. It had so much more of Ari and Russell as opposed to their bosses, which I really loved this. It had so many elements that I enjoyed. I really liked this book. This was so good. The next class was astronomy, and to get an O in astronomy I had to read a book with a word in the title that has the same word in it as the last song you listen to. That was really complicated to say. I believe the song title was called Days of Wine and Roses from this jazz playlist I was listening to, and the book that I picked was 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. Like, days. I gave this book a 4.5 and a 1 spice rating. This is the kind of book that if it doesn't make you cry, it makes your soul feel heavy, which is a very strange way to explain that, like, you know that weighted feeling in your chest when, like, you feel like you kind of want to cry, but, like, you're not actually crying, you just feel heavy? That's what this book is. But this book also had, like, some really funny moments of levity in it, and it's the kind of humour that comes if you've been through shit, and it's got some really funny lines, like the human equivalent of a spam email. I really loved that little bit. That had me absolutely laughing out loud for a long time. But this is the kind of book that I understand the hype, because I don't think I'll ever get over this book. This book, just thinking about it, makes my heart just sit a little bit lower in my chest. Like, I loved the connection between Shane and Ava, and they felt so real to me. I loved this book. I 100% understand the hype for it. If you haven't read it, I strongly recommend that you do so. To get a Q in astronomy, I had to read a book from a completed series, and for this one I read The Locker Room by Megan Quinn. This is book 1 in the Brentwood Boys series, and this one took me so long to read. I actually started this one at the very beginning of July, but I'm counting it for August because, like, I only read about 30 odd pages in July. I read the rest of it in August. But from the start of July to, like, the 25th of August is when I finished this one. It took me so long because I forget, for some reason, that I actually don't really vibe with college sport romances. They feel really young to me. It almost feels YA, which I get is a me thing, because I never went to college, I never went to university. That's not my lived experience. For me, it was very much school was as a child, job was as an adult, so college is just that weird in-between level that I never experienced, so it feels very young to me personally, and also the dude bro vibes are just not my thing. Like, it fully just, no. I gave it a 2.5 and a 2 spice rating. Like, it was funny and it was well written, it's just I am very much not the target audience for this. The time jump at the end, after the third act breakup, there's a gap of about 8 years, and then they all of a sudden get together like nothing's changed. Like, it hasn't been 8 years, and they're not different people, and they haven't changed in the last 8 years. It just really, really did not work. It did not work. The ending was weird. It didn't make sense. The first half of it was not for me, and I can understand that. The ending was just not good. So take away from that what you will, but I didn't vibe with this. And to get a D in astronomy, I had to pick up a red book, and for this one I picked up another Megan Quinn book, and I picked up So Not Meant to Be. I gave this book a 2 spice rating and a 3.75. I loved JP in this book. I thought he was so sweet and so adorable, and when he, like, the pigeon thing was just so random and so funny, and I was just the weirdest fucking thing is when he got sad he donated to pigeons. Pigeons need love too. Just thought that was absolutely ridiculous and very funny. And the way that he absolutely adores Kelsey is just so sweet. I didn't really vibe with Kelsey all that much though, because she had a lot of prejudices and a lot of assumptions when it came to JP that were kind of founded on nothing. So she was making all of these assumptions about him based on zero evidence, and it really kind of annoyed me. There were also a lot of references to her previous work in this book with the podcast element, which didn't really see the point in. It just felt a little bit out of place. I didn't really vibe with that. I mean, it was great to see all the other characters from the other books again, but it just didn't make sense for the story, and it didn't really need to be there in my opinion. I loved JP in this. He absolutely made this book. This one was less smutty than the first book in this series, and I'm very excited to pick up the last one, but I really love JP in this one. He made this story. For my next class, it's Conjuration, and for this one I had to read a court or a royal book, and for that I picked up Court of the Vampire Queen by Katie Robert. I gave this book a 4-star out of 5 spice rating. This is pretty much predominantly smut, but it is technically 3 books bound up into one. It's her Bloodline series, which you can tell that it is 3 books bound up into one because the story flows like it is 3 books and not 1 book. The main thing that bothers me about this book is how much the female main character, Mina, cries in this book. Like, I know that she's going through some stuff, but it just got to be a lot, and it was kind of annoying. I'm not going to lie to you, it got kind of annoying kind of quickly. I love everything else about this. The ending, she was really badass. I love how all of the characters have very individual personalities, especially between all of the guys. I like the fact that it's a why choose and it's a very polyamorous kind of why choose, like they're all in a relationship with each other as opposed to them all being in a relationship with just her and not between the guys as well. So there is sword crossing in this book, but just the all of the time crying just kind of got on my nerves. But I also liked the fact that it tied into her Deal with a Demon series as well, with the main character from one of those books being in this as well, and that whole storyline. I liked that that kind of crossed over, but overall I really, really loved this book. It's just that one thing that really kind of got on my nerves. But overall I definitely recommend it. To get a Q in Conjuration, I had to read a book either set in a different country or based on a different culture than yours, and for this one, I read Written in Starlight by Isabel Ibanez. And I believe this one is based on Bolivian folklore. I could be wrong about that one. This is book 2 in a series. I gave this one a 2-star rating. I just really, really did not like the main character in this one. I thought the Contessa was a spoiled, entitled brat. She really just wound me up. Don't get me wrong, she did the things that she needed to get done, but she very much was looking for the male main character in this one to be her knight in shining armour and save her, even though, you know, she has the full capability of saving herself, which she proves multiple times in this book, but she still just wants him to rescue her, and I don't vibe with that type of story. Like, get off your fucking arse and rescue yourself. I like the story and I like the writing, but the characters just completely killed this for me. I didn't vibe with it. It wasn't for me. To get a D in Conjuration, I had to read an indie or self-published work, and for this I read Releasing Melodique by Victoria Evelyn. I gave this book a 4.25 and a 2 spice rating. If you've been on my channel for literally any amount of time, you know that I am a Victoria Evelyn stan. I absolutely fucking love her. You don't necessarily have to read her books in order. I mean, I recommend it, but when it comes to this one in particular, you do kind of need to read Using Feiho first, just for all the context. I like the fact that in this book we have Katie, who's been abducted for the longest. She's 29 in this book, and she was abducted as a teenager. She's been abducted for the last, she's been gone for the last 14 years from Earth. So she has more context clues when it comes to the culture of the different alien races, and she understands where she is a lot more than a lot of the other people in the series. I love that Melody got his happy ending. I love that they finally made it out. It was just so good. I love this series so much. I will continue to read everything that she ever puts out. There are 2 books in her series currently that I have not read, which I want to read, but I also don't want to read because I want to know what happens, but also I want there to still be books for me to read. It's kind of a catch-22 of being a reader. I could talk about this series forever. If you've not picked up anything by Victoria Evelyn yet, then I don't know what to tell you at this point, because please do it. Please, please, please. That would be great. Thanks. My next class is Demonology, and to get an O in Demonology I had to pick up the first book I saw on socials. This might be cheating a little bit, but just because I follow the author on TikTok, and this was the first book that popped up on my FYP of that day, and that's Mistletoe by Kimberly Lemming. I gave this book a 4.5 and a 3 spice rating. This book is set in the same world as her Mead and Mishap series, which kind of has the origin of Alexis, which is like the sentient sword in this series, which is just so fun and funny, and the main character's like a blacksmith's daughter, but there's a curse set on all of the ore because her father stole the ore from this male main character who is a shifter, and we love that for him. Kind of in the same vein as That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion on a Werewolf, which is book 2 in the series. But I really enjoyed like the chemistry. It's a little insta-love, but at 60 pages, are we surprised? No. But it's just, I adore this series so much. I always have such a good time with a Kimberly Lemming book. It's just so much fun, and it's completely right up my street. I love it. To get a Q in Demonology, I had to read a book with a magical creature, and for this one I picked up Muscles and Monsters by Ashley Bennett. I gave this book a 3.75 and a 3 spice rating. I say magical creature, it's kind of a magical creature. It's a little more like monsters than actual magic, because the main character in this is a wolf or a werewolf, which I concede is a magical creature, so I'm counting it. But like, he's not a shifter werewolf, like he just remains a wolf the entire time. So the descriptions of kissing the muzzle was a little bit fucking weird. Atlas was really shy, especially because of like the way his ex treated him, and when he seemed to not be able to stand up for himself when his ex just turns up, Tegan fully advocates for him and just completely stands up for him, and I loved that scene. It was so sweet. It was a little bit insta-love, but I still had a really good time reading this one. I think I am going to pick up the rest of the books in this series. I thought this was just really, really cute. For a D in Demonology, I had to put a poll on social media and let the internet choose, and for this I put a poll on my Instagram, which is always linked down in the description below, and the poll and the internet picked Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. And I tabbed the heck out of this book. So before we get into like my quickie little review of this, I just want to read you what my tabs were for this book. We have Tiny Violin, Miss Kuang really said that out loud, racist xenophobic bullshit, and I'm not the problem is clearly the problem, which I love that for me. I love those tabs, and I love the way that the tabs look in this book. I gave this book a 4.5. The first half of this book in particular was so fucking good. It was just so well done, so well crafted, said so many things about the publishing industry. It was brilliant. It's kind of the end of this book where it fell apart a little bit for me. Like, the end of this story just seemed to go in a very strange direction, but it seemed to be like the only type of direction it could go in. I get it, but also it didn't really make sense. The reason why I gave it a 4.5 is because that sits at a 5-star on Goodreads for me, and this book deserves 5 stars. I just didn't really vibe with the ending all that much. The main character of June was absolutely the correct avenue to tell this story and to point out all of the issues when it comes to racism and that kind of thing when it comes to publishing, because oh my god, she was an asshole. Like, she was an absolute asshole. She was the absolute antithesis of everything that is wrong with white women. And I say that as a fucking pasty bitch. Like, no, I absolutely could not fucking stand her, and if you liked her, I feel like you might be the problem. But also, she works the system because she can work the system. She steals her friend's manuscript and she publishes it as her own. Now, her friend was Asian. She was not a white woman, so she was not the right person to be telling that story, and that's a topic that gets brought up a lot in this book. If you've not read it, don't read it for the story, read it for the topic. I feel like the story goes into a very strange place, but the topic that it brings up is the reason to read this story. I feel like that's the reason to read R.F. Kuang's work. It's not necessarily for the story is just the way that the point gets across, more than it being about the story and the point is secondary, if you know what I mean. Like, that's kind of how her work tends to skew, in my opinion. That's just from what I've inferred online. This is the only R.F. Kuang book that I've actually read. I don't know about The Poppy War, I've not read that one, but from this and Babel, that's kind of the vibe that I get. While I didn't vibe with the ending, I loved this. It said so much. I will be thinking about this book for a long time to come, and I just thought it was just so good and so well done. My next class is Elemental Studies, and to get an O in Elemental Studies I needed to read a book with Earth in the title. Now for this one we're allowed to have Earth in the series name, so I picked 5th Season by N.K. Jemisin. This book is very popular and very well loved, and I ended up giving this book a 3-star. It took me a really long time to get invested in this, and when I did get invested, I was more invested in the plot than the characters. I thought it was a really well told story and it was objectively really good. It just didn't grab me the way I wanted it to. And I'm very much a character driven person and I just couldn't get invested in the characters, which became a little bit of a problem for me. So if I don't care about the characters, it's really hard for me to care about the actual story. So I didn't really vibe with this one. It just wasn't for me. I think objectively it was good, it just didn't work for me personally. To get a Q in Elemental Studies I had to read a book over 500 pages, and for this I read the absolute behemoth that is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J Maas. Like, look at the fucking size of this. You could kill a person with this book. Like, it is fucking ridiculous. Which is why I listened to the audiobook. I gave this book a 3.5. I don't know what it is about Sarah J Maas's Crescent City series in particular, but it just doesn't work for me. I read her Throne of Glass series and I really enjoyed that one, and I loved ACOTAR the first time I read it, but this just doesn't work for me. It's too fucking long. It is way too fucking long. There is no need for this book to be 800 fucking pages. Like, I couldn't even tell you what happened. It was 800 pages and I just don't care. I don't care about the main character. I liked the ending that everyone was talking about. I get it. I do. But that's mostly for the other things that it ties into. I'm trying to be really fucking vague here. I didn't vibe with this at all. I don't care about the characters. I don't care about the world. The world building this, quite frankly, fucking sucks. I just don't like it. I liked the first one a lot more than I liked this one, and I feel like the first book probably could have been written as a standalone. This was just not necessary to me. I'm interested in to see where it goes because of the last sentence and the last paragraph and the very last page of this book. I'm interested in to see where it goes, but am I 800 pages worth of interested? Probably not. And to get a D in Elemental Studies I had to read a book with a snake on the cover, and for this one I picked up Woven in Moonlight by Isabel Ibanez. This one has a snake just here. I gave this book a 3.5. Woven in Moonlight and Written in Starlight are like companion sequels. The story does follow on, but they follow different characters and they can individually be read as standalones. They work better when you read them together. I did read this one first before reading the other one, but I much preferred the first one. Personally, I would say just read the first one, don't bother with the second. I was interested in the world and the characters, and I liked the growth that the main character went through. And the plot kept me reasonably engaged, but it just didn't grip me the way I was expecting. I don't find that a lot of YA fantasy does grab me very much anymore, which is unfortunate. This didn't grab me the way I wanted it to, but it was an engaging enough story and it was very well written. I like the world building in this. I like the fact that it's based on Bolivian folklore, which I didn't really know anything about, so that was really interesting to learn about as well. I liked it, but I didn't love it. My next class is Spells and Incantations, and to get an O in Spells and Incantations I had to read a comic, a graphic novel, or a manga. And for this I read Lore Olympus Volume 4 by Rachel Smythe. This is the beautiful Illumicrate edition with the sprayed edges. I gave this book a 4.75. This is probably the only age gap romance that I actually root for. I love all of these characters, with the obvious exceptions of the ones that I want to punch in the face. I will not spoil it for you, but well, if you've read it, you know, because, oh, I hate him. Oh, I really fucking hate him. I'm not going to say who it is because this is volume 4, but like, if you know, then you know that I want to drop kick this motherfucker straight from Olympus all the way into Tartarus. Like, not a fucking single iota of this person. Just, oh no, fucking hate him. And for a change, I don't actually mean Zeus, because anyone that knows anything about Greek mythology knows that Zeus is kind of a dick. And I'm not actually referring to Zeus in this, because, while yes, he is kind of a prick, he is not the biggest asshole in this series. I love Hades, I love Persephone, I cannot wait to see Persephone come into her own some more. I love that for them. I absolutely adore this series. I cannot wait to pick up more from this series. I will read it forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. To get a Q in Spells and Incantations, I had to read a book with either fire on the cover or a black cover, and for this I read Feral by Sarah Fields, which has a black cover. I gave this a 2.75 and a 4 spice rating. There was something about this where I feel like I'm not well versed enough in dark romance to feel comfortable reading this, because it felt really fucking rapey. Like, you're in her head and she is actively enjoying herself, but she genuinely says no and stop multiple times, and I think it's meant to be like consensual non-consent, but it just made me feel deeply fucking uncomfortable, and I did not like that at all. I mean, realistically, she is very enthusiastic about it after that first time, but she actively says no multiple times. She actively says stop multiple times, and there's even the line of whether I wanted him to or not, which really kind of makes me want to vomit. Like, no. I really don't think I'm the reader for this one. I think it's technically considered dark romance, and I don't think that I really read dark romance at all. I am the hallmark with smut kind of girly, so this is very, very much outside my comfort zone, but I didn't like this. Like, the rest of it was fine, but that put such a bad taste in my mouth that it kind of destroyed the whole story for me. And to get a D in Spells and Incantations, I had to read a book in silence, and for this one I read Extraordinary by V.E. Schwab. This is set in the same world and is the same kind of series as Vicious and Vengeful, and I have not read either of those books, and that was my mistake. I gave this book a 3.5 star, but I feel like it might have been more, or maybe less, I don't know, if I'd have read Vicious first. I felt like I was missing so many context clues and so much backstory that it almost didn't really make sense for me. Like, it does make sense and it does stand alone, but I felt like for me I was missing so much backstory that I felt very removed from the comic itself. The artwork was beautiful, I liked the actual idea of it, but it just didn't really work for me because I felt like I was missing so much. But for right now, as it stands, it's a 3.5 and I'm a dumbass. My next class was Artificery, and to get an O in Artificery I had to read a book with a gemstone in the title, and for this I read Sapphire Sunset by C. Travis Rice. I gave this book a 3.75 and a 2 spice rating. I really enjoyed this. It was a little bit long for me personally. I listened to the audiobook for this one and I feel like it could have benefited from a dual narration. This is on Kindle Unlimited, at the very least in the UK it is, and it has the audiobook on Kindle Unlimited as well, which is cool. and book 3 has the audiobook on it on Kindle Unlimited, but I guess book 2 I'm just gonna have to pick up just on my Kindle. I feel like a good representation of whether or not the setting of a place is good is whether or not I actually want to go there, and I really wanted to visit Sapphire Cove. I thought it sounded absolutely beautiful. I like that this has a lot of discussions about wealth and different walks of life and being the right kind of gay and straight passing privilege as well, because one of the main characters in this male-male romance is straight passing, and then the other male main character is very effeminate, and he gets a lot of shit for being really effeminate as well. I loved both of these main characters. I loved all of the characters in this. I thought it was just so good and so well done. I love this world, I love these characters, and I can't wait to find out what happens to the guy in book 2. Next, to get a Q in Artificery, I had to read an adventure. Now, I struggled a lot with this one, but technically, this counts. I read volume 8 of Spy Family. Now this actually does count as an adventure. It has the adventure bracket in it on Goodreads, and it is counted as adventurous on Storygraph. So I'm counting it. I gave this volume a 4.25. In this one we get to see Yor kick all sorts of badass assassin butt, and I loved it. I love Yor and getting her to see her in her element of being an assassin, which we've missed for quite a few of the last volumes, so I love getting back to the core of their secret identities, as it were. It's so good. I love this series. And to get a D in Artificery, I had to read a book with a pet on the cover, and for that I read Falling Hard for the Royal Guard by Megan Clausen. This has a little puppy just here between the guard's legs. This is a clean romance, so it gets a 0 spice rating, and I gave it a 2.75. There was a couple of things that really bothered me about this story, the main one being the lack of female friendships. In this story, up until like the very end, there's only 4 female characters. There's the main character, there's the character that doesn't speak, and then there's the 2 bitchy colleagues. So the lack of female friendships in this is so fucking annoying, and I cannot fucking stand it. It drove me mad the entire time. The 2 bitchy colleagues just felt like such a fucking cliche, and it was painful to read about, if I'm perfectly honest. And then the second thing that really annoyed me is her ex coming back over and over again, that felt like it was only in there to create conflict. He only turned up when conflict was necessary for the story, and it didn't feel natural. It felt almost unrealistic for her ex to keep coming back at the points when he did. It just didn't make sense to me. The third thing about this book that really bothered me is the love interest in this story just fucks off for a month midway through the book. Like, he just disappears from the story. He's off helping his family for whatever reason, and he doesn't call, he doesn't text, there's no interaction for like a month of this book. And like, it's not set over multiple years, it's just a good third of this story. He's just not there. It's a romance. Why is he fucked off with no form of communication? It just feels really fucking stupid. I like the fact that she did all of the history and research and everything into the Tower of London. I thought that was really cool and that was really fascinating, but I cared so much more about the history and the research that went into all of that about the Tower of London than I did about the romance or the plot, which, considering this is a romance book, kind of tells you quite a lot about it. And the last thing in this that really just pissed me off, this is me being petty. I'm fully aware that this is me being petty, don't care. There's the whole Ravens part of this book that just really bothered me, because she kept referring to it as a conspiracy of ravens. Now, it's a conspiracy of lemurs. It's an unkindness of ravens. It's not a conspiracy of ravens. That is the name of the group of that specific animal. It's not a conspiracy of ravens. That's not the right thing. And it bothered me. It really pissed me off. Again, me being petty. Do I care? Nope. Not even a little bit. My next class is Inscription, and to get an O in Inscription I had to read a book from my end of year TBR. And for this one, I read Lore Olympus Volume 3 by Rachel Smythe. Listen, I know what I said. Okay, feel free to call me out in the comments because I 100% deserve it and I know what I said. I know I said I was going to read Punk 57 because I absolutely had to get to Punk 57. Have I read it yet? Nope. Does it still scare me? Yep. But it was getting towards the end of the month and this was a very quick read and it is technically on my end of year TBR and it counts, okay? Like, it counts for the prompt. So I'm making excuses, yes. I'll get to it, I swear. I hope. Yeah, but feel free to call me out in the comments because I 100% deserve it. I should have read the other one. I didn't. I read this instead. They both count for the prompt though. Oops. I gave this book a 4.75 as well. The only thing I have to say about this one is episode 71 feels out of place in the story. Like, it just felt like it was in the wrong spot. But other than that, I love the story, I love the artwork, I will continue reading this forever and ever and ever. There is nothing about this that I haven't already said, especially in reference to, like, Volume 4. But I love this story, I love this series, I will read this series forever. The artwork is stunning, the use of colour is beautiful, it's just genius. This entire thing. This and Heartstopper are probably two of my favourite graphic novel series of all time. To get a Q in Inscription, I needed to read a book with Shield on the title or in the cover, and for this one I read Shielded by Kaylin Flanders. This is the Fairy Loot edition and has this really pretty artwork with it as well. I gave this book a 2.75. It seemed to be pretty standard YA fantasy. It was pretty formulaic, the pacing was a little slow. I didn't really care about the characters, and the travelling portion of this book seemed to go on forever. Like, they seem to be travelling for fucking ages, for no reason whatsoever. The traitor in this book I suspected from the very beginning, and I was right. So I think that's either a good thing or a bad thing. To me, it's a bad thing because it makes the story seem somewhat predictable. It wasn't bad, it just didn't stand out in any way. I just don't really vibe with this. It was fine, but that's all it was. It was just fine. And to get a D in Inscription, I needed to read a book that's not a debut, and for this one I read Radiance by Grace Draven. I gave this book a 3.75 and a 1 spice rating. I really like the fact that they actually found each other physically repulsive at the start, and it's like an arranged marriage story, but it's a true strangers to friends to lovers, because it goes from, like, finding each other physically very repulsive, both of them do on both sides of it. They have this banter, this back and forth that is just them being pure, like, brutal honest with each other, but in a way that they don't actually find offensive because they both think the same thing about each other, and it grows into mutual respect, which grows into love, which grows into physical affection, which I really liked that projection of their relationship. There was the politics and the world building and the plot of this story as well, but let's be honest, I was here for the romance, and I really liked the romance of this story, and I had such a good time reading this. My next class was Law, and to get an O in Law I needed to get a bookseller recommendation, which I did in my reading vlog, which I will also link in the description down below. And for this one, my bookseller picked Love and Other Scams by PJ Ellis. I gave this book a 2.25. This is like a romance heist story between two thieves and con artists. We have Kat, who is the main character of this, it's all from her POV, and we have Jake as well, who is the con artist that she works with in order to steal the ring of one of her friends that is, like, crazy wealthy, kind of a bitch. And I feel like if you're here for the drama, then you might like this. If you like the drama of, like, shitty people, you might enjoy this story. Quite frankly, I'm not that person. I don't care about the drama of shitty people. They can go be shitty fucking elsewhere. I don't care. The only character in this that I actually liked was Jake, the love interest and the other con artist. And I feel like because it's all from Kat's POV, which is the main character, we really could have benefited from dual POV from both of them, especially because Jake actually does a lot of the heist part of it, and hers is all the interconnecting emotional stuff with all of the other characters. I don't like the other characters, I don't like her. The only character I like was Jake and his family. That's it. and I feel like we missed out on so much actual heist by not putting this in dual POV. I was a little disappointed, and the bookseller just didn't get the right recommendation for me. To get a Q in lore, I had to pick up a book with clothing on the cover, and for this one I picked up Happenstance by Tessa Bailey. I read this in my reading vlog, which is linked down below, but I ended up giving this a 2.25 rating and a 2 spice rating, which for a Why Choose Romance is a very, very low spice rating. I just didn't vibe with this, like, at all. I love Tessa Bailey's writing, I very much enjoy the majority of her work, but I fucking hated this so much. And in a lot of Why Choose Romances that I've read, not that I've read a vast amount, but the guys all seem to know each other before they meet the female main character. All 4 of these people were complete strangers before they met, and now all 3 of these guys are all falling over themselves to be in a relationship with her, to the point of willing to share her even though they don't really know each other. And I don't get it. And my favourite main character in this is Gabe, who she just made stupid for no reason, and I didn't like this. I was so disappointed in this book. I really wanted to love it, but you can kind of tell she wrote it for, like, TikTok filler. It just didn't work. To get a D qualification in lore, I needed to read a horror book. Now, horror is not my genre, but I picked up The Last Conversation by Paul Tremblay. Now, this is a book from the Forward collection, which has lots of, like, little novellas from different authors, and I've read 2 of those so far, which were Emergency Skin and Summerfrost, and this was the 3rd book from that collection that I've read, and the other 2 that I've read were actually a little bit, like, scary or creepy in some capacity, and I figured Paul Tremblay, being a predominantly horror thriller type of author, would give, like, same vibes. And this wasn't necessarily scary or horror or anything like that, as it was more, like, thought-provoking. I mean, it still falls under the horror genre, so I'm still gonna count it, but it didn't feel scary or creepy or anything like that to me. Like, it was maybe a little bit unsettling, but I was sort of underwhelmed by this one. I like this collection and I'm probably going to pick up more from it, but this one wasn't for me. If the angle of this video has changed slightly, I'm really sorry, but my battery died, so I had to take it off the tripod and then put it on charge, and, like, now stuff's moved. But now we can get back into filming this video, and the next class is Psionics and Divination. And now, to get an O in Psionics and Divination, I had to pull a random tarot card, and the tarot card I picked for this one was The World from my Blood and Honey set. It's got 2 girls on the cover, and it's got the swords, so the one I picked for this is In Real Life by Cory Doctorow and Jen Wang. This has, again, got 2 female characters on the cover, and it's also got the sword right here, so it matches perfectly, I think. I gave this book a 3.25. I was expecting something very different than what I actually got going into this, and that's kind of on me because I went in blind pretty much just based on the cover, and that's not what I got at all. There's a whole, like, forward introduction section that talks a lot about, like, economics in this, and that had me a little hesitant because that wasn't really the vibe I was going for. I was just expecting it to be about a girl gamer, which it is, but that's not the crux of the book. And it does seem to try too hard to get its point across, and it just kind of really took me out of the story. The artwork was really well done. It's not personally my style, but I can appreciate that it is done really well, and I liked all the use of colour and everything like that. But the forcing of the economics and the trying to make a point of this book took away from all the fun of it, in my opinion. It just didn't really work for me, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I was hoping to, which is why I ended up giving it a 3.25. To get a Q qualification in Psionics and Divination, I needed to read a book set in the future. For this one, I read An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. I gave this book a 4-star. I think it's a really well-crafted story about how toxic internet fame in particular can be and how quickly it can grab you. The main character of April is not likable, and she's not supposed to be. She's selfish, she's self-centered, and like the whole world revolves around her because of this one viral video that she had. She's kind of entitled and she frequently makes stupid decisions, but she's very, very real character, and you can understand like how she got to be the way that she is. It makes a lot of sense to the story. She's not intentionally cruel, she's just misinformed and misguided, but she is the absolute perfect vehicle for this story to be told. I thought it was so well done. I did, however, like the parts of the story that were like the dream sequences and the coding and all of that part of it. It felt very reminiscent of Ready Player One, which I really liked. I think for his debut novel, this was really brilliant. And to get a D in psionics and divination, I needed to read a book with Lily either in the title, on the cover, or in the author's name. And for this, I picked up The Prison Healer by Lynette Nonny. This has a Lily just here on the cover, and actually here, and here, and here, and here, and here. This is a reread for me. I read this a few years ago, but now I have the entire series, so I wanted to reread the first one so I can binge it. This is actually the Fairy Loot edition. Like, it's got the sprayed edges, and it's got the artwork on the actual hardback, and the art print on the underside of the dust jacket, and it's so pretty. I gave this book a 4-star the first time I read it, and now I'm giving it a 4.25 star. I love this book. This book is kind of like what I want from a YA fantasy. This grabbed me in the way that I wanted it to. I was interested in the characters, in the story. I am really bad at remembering books, okay? Like, I suck at it. I read this book 2 years ago. The whole bulk of the story pretty much I forgot, but that ending is cemented in my brain. And when I reread it, I still had the same like shock value, and I loved all of the twists and turns that this book took, and like the challenges that they had to go through. This was just such a roller coaster. I feel like it was a little bit Throne of Glass coded, just a smidge. But like, if you've read both, then you'll understand the comparisons. I loved all of the characters. Tip is just such an absolute sweetie. I love him. I'm not gonna spoil it, but like, the romance with that ending, just, I need to know what happens next. I must know. I need to pick up the next book, like, immediately. My next class was for restoration, and to get an O in restoration I had to start a book before bed. And for this one I chose Caught in the Barn by Kenzie Haven. I gave this book a 2.5 and a 2 spice rating. This is predominantly smut. It's just kind of like a one night stand kind of 34-page, really quick, in and out kind of novella. I like that it doesn't focus too much on the relationship of it, or even the characters themselves. It's just the smut. But the reason why it only got a 2 spice rating is because it wasn't good smut. In my personal opinion, again, all of this is just my opinion, there is no plot, it is just smut, but it is only a 2 spice rating because it's not good smut. So, that's really all I have to say about this. It was a quickie, but it wasn't a very satisfying quickie. To get a Q qualification in restoration, I needed to read a book in a different spot every single time I picked it up. For this one, I picked up volume 6 of Spy Family. This was really easy because it's a manga, so I literally just picked it up and read it all in one sitting, all in one spot underneath my weighted blanket. This is actually my lowest rated volume of Spy Family at 2.75 because of one singular panel that left such a bad taste in my mouth that I couldn't give it a higher rating than that. It's when Becky and Anya go shopping, and Anya doesn't really care for shopping. She's not interested in that in any way. And Becky tries to get loads of clothes to get Lloyd to find her attractive. Now, Becky is a child. A literal fucking child. And Lloyd is a grown-ass adult. Now, Lloyd is completely oblivious to Becky's crush, as he fucking should be. And there's one panel in this where she's trying on different clothes to find out what Lloyd would like. This is not necessarily a spoiler, but like, I kind of need to explain the context for it to make sense as to why I didn't like this. but she's trying on all these different clothes to get Lloyd to find her attractive, and she's 6, and the panel is like, maybe he'll like sexy. No 6-year-old should understand the concept of what the fuck is sexy is. And it just left such a bad taste in my mouth, and I fucking hated it, and just no. It pissed me off so much. I hate this volume, but I like all the other ones. This one sucks. The fact that a 6-year-old used the word sexy in context. No 6-year-old should understand the concept of what that is. I'm sorry, but no. Absolutely not. Made me deeply uncomfortable. Like, deeply uncomfortable. I hate it. Just no. Just no. Nope. And to get a D in restoration, I needed to use a random letter generator. For this one, I got the letter S, so that was really easy. I just read volume 7 from Spy Family. After reading volume 6, which I actively disliked, this was so much better. This is the part of the story that I actually really enjoy. We're getting back into the family dynamic of it all. I gave this book a 4-star, and this is the reason why I like Spy Family. Volumes 5 and 6 were just not for me. 7, 8, 9, and then the first 4 volumes as well. That is what I like. I like the family dynamics. I like the school setting. This is better. This is what I wanted. I'm so happy we got back to where we were originally in this series compared to the last 2 volumes. So I had so much more fun with this one, and it made me want to continually pick up the series. And my last class is shapeshifting. And to get knowing shapeshifting, I had to read a book with vampires, and for this one I read Vampire Wants a Wife by Andy M. Long. I gave this book a 2.5 and a 1 spice rating. I was expecting this to be fun and funny and ridiculous. It was definitely ridiculous, but not in a fun and funny kind of way. Like, I really liked the plot of this book, but it was a romance book, and I did not give a flying shit biscuit about the romance. Didn't care at all. I like that it's set up for the rest of the books in the series, but I will not be continuing this series. It tried to be funny, but all the jokes just fell flat. Like, I feel like in every single point of this book, it just missed the mark for me, and it just didn't work. To get a Q in shapeshifting, I had to use a random colour generator. For this one, I got the colour of navy, so I picked Nimona by N.D. Stevenson. I gave this book a 3.75. This book was just a short, quick, good time. I really liked the story of this one and the good versus evil kind of aspect of it. Wasn't the biggest fan of the art style, personally. I don't let the art style hold it against my rating though, because that's very, very personal preference. It's just, this one was a little too angular for me. It's very straight lines. And I believe there's like a movie or a TV show or something on some platform based on this book. Not sure where, but I'm fairly certain I've seen that advert trailer. Couldn't tell you where though. But I really had fun with this. It was cute, it was fun, it was quick. I'm glad I've read it, and I'm glad it's on my shelves. And the last book I have to talk about, finally the last book that I have to talk about, is for a D in shapeshifting, and that's a book with chairs on the cover, and this one I chose the +1 by Maisie Eddings, which has chairs here, 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 and here. I gave this book a 4.25 and a 2 spice rating. This is probably my favourite book in this entire series. I think the series is complete. I mean, there's 4 friends and there's 3 books, but you kind of see one of the friends' relationship in book 1. Each of them deals with different mental health aspects. So the first one deals with anxiety, the second one deals with ADHD, and this one deals with PTSD. I really loved the way that that was done, the way that was portrayed, and Jude's character and all of the things that he went through, and how therapy was shown in such a positive light in this. I thought it was so well done. This could have fallen into so many traps, and it missed all of them, and I love that for them, because it was brother's best friend, but it didn't have the whole patriarchal bullshit, and it had no third act breakup. I love no third act breakup. There's something about it that just makes me happy. And their banter, their back and forth between Indria and Jude was just delicious, and the way they supported each other. I just wanted to piece Jude, and I just wanted to give him a big hug and make sure he was okay. Let him know that it was fine to ask for help, and I loved this so much. I love them both together. This is such a good book, and this is definitely my favourite in the series. And that is it. That is all 42 of the books that I read in the month of August. While I didn't exactly stick to my TBR, I did complete every prompt, so I'm very proud of myself for that one. And if you managed to get this far into the video, first of all, thank you so much, because I'm tired. Are you tired? Because I'm tired. So let's leave the strength flex muscle emoji in the comments down below if you made it this far, because I feel like we are very strong for making it through this video. And for now, thank you so much for stopping by. It has been lovely having you here, and I hope to see you in another video coming very soon. Bye.